So, the new Powerpuff Girls are here, and it's, well, a lot of people didn't really seem to like it. It's kinda like how people didn't really like Teen Titans Go. The main reason why I brought this up is because Pan Pizza made a top 10 worst reboot countdowns, with the 2016 Powerpuff Girls as one of the entries. However, this caused Nero Q to do a a response video of the 2-minute segment of the Powerpuff Girls that you made. With all that being said, let's take a look.
Oh man. Okay, Rebel Taxi. Or is it Pan Pizza? What the heck? Look, someone needs to say something, and I really didn't want to be the one to do it, but I will. Your dislike for the new Powerpuff Girls show is alright, and I respect your opinion.
Okay. Well, looks like this commentary that I'm making is already...
At least that's what I wish I could say.
Fucking hell, I just wanted to play some goddamn deadcore already.
Sugar, spice, and oh, the reboot doesn't do that anymore.
What? You realize the intro on Cartoon Network is not the full intro, right? It does have that part.
Spice. And everything nice. These were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect little girl.
Allow me to bring in the 25-second version that Cartoon Network usually plays within their overall show. They didn't really bring that into the overall intro, especially for the fact that they usually play the 25-second version of it when the show airs on Cartoon Network. Yes, the 2-minute version does have that part, but even then, does anybody within the US really want to sit through a 2-minute version of the intro when it does air? The goal is to engage the audience and get hooked over something for a small time frame. Having 2 minutes as the intro would be a tad bit long, and some viewers might be turned off by that. Finally, I don't really want to bring in Pan Pizza's part 1 of this review of the new Powerpuff Girls into this and actually focus this video on its own merits, but he did complain about why this is somewhat of a problem. This is somewhat of a problem because the new audience wouldn't know that they were made by Sugar, Spice, Everything Nice, and Chemical X. They would just think, oh yeah, they fight crime while having superpowers in the curfew, but that'll just be it.
Powerpuff Girls 2016 at first feels like the old show, but you eventually realize they managed to screw up everything.
You haven't really watched the new Powerpuff Girls show, have you? And I mean really watched it. Take off those cheap nostalgia glasses and give it a fair chance.
And how about you take those small goggles that you have off? I mean, dude, I can see you past that hood, and you seem to have those self-prescription goggles recently, huh? All joking aside, you're only using that argument just so that you can discredit everything that Pan Pizza had to say about the overall show because it's just nostalgia. I mean, it just kinda feels like as if this entire video that you've made is only because of the fact that it's new and not really on its own merit. This argument is also dumb because at times you don't really know what some of the people grew up with.
Of course it's not going to be like the original, but you know what? The original wasn't that great. It was a good show, and me and my friends loved growing up with it, but it still has its flaws. For one, the animation was good, and it had its own style, but this show's animation is 100 times better. The animation is fluent, and yes, I think it's a great improvement over Craig McCracken's style. And I don't just mean the original animation, I mean Craig McCracken, the creator style in general. I don't like his animation style that much, and if I had to choose between this and this,
wow, guess the party's over. Nice.
yeah, I choose the new style. And don't tell me you wouldn't.
I won. There, I've said it. You can't fade my onion farm now, you pleb! But seriously, I actually didn't really like the overall animation style that they had within the overall show. For starters, it just seems kinda bland. I mean, especially with the overall Flash animation that's going on now to date. The color choices seems a bit generic, and I felt like it had somewhat the same style slash movement as shows like Steven Universe, Clarence, and maybe We Bare Bears at times share some similar traits with the Powerpuff Girls reboot. Though, what am I doing? My point here is completely subjective. Though how you feel the animation will be brought up later on within the video when I explain the whole subjectivity part on your end. What I can say, however, is that you basically used something from seasons 1 to 2 of the old show to back up your point when season 5 and 6 had, to me personally, much better animation style as it's a lot more fluid and smooth. That's kinda really not a good comparison to make, truth be told, as both of the art styles are a bit different from the later seasons to the earlier seasons.
She'll be there.
The main joke about Powerpuff Girls is that it's cutesy soft girls in a sharp pointy rough world full of threatening villains. But the reboot is cutesy soft girls in a cutesy soft world full of cutesy soft villains. Where's the contrast?
What the heck are you talking about? That wasn't the joke of the show or the idea of the show. You wanna know what that was?
So when you originally created the Powerpuff Girls, what did you have in mind for the show?
I just wanted to do a really cool superhero show, and I just thought drawing 3 little girls as superheroes was way more interesting than a big, strong, muscly guy. Because you've seen that muscly guy a million times and it doesn't mean anything, but these little girls seem new and fresh, and they just seemed a lot tougher because they were so cute.
That clip actually strengthened his point, really. Even if Craig mainly wanted to have the show with cutie girls as being the main heroes, Craig actually kinda said what Pan Pizza mainly just said, as the concept was mainly about the cutie girls being the overall heroes. Though there's also this part that you've stated at the very next point.
This new show still retains that, and the roundness of the characters, whether villain or not, adds to the new style of the show. That's not a minus, that's a plus.
But even then, while not outright stated, he either implied for the fact, or one can even argue for the fact that you can add in the cutesy girls as being the superheroes, but also use the other same formulas as having the world being tough and scary, with the villains also being tough and scary, and it could work. That worked here in the old show because you would see the girls struggle through the harsh surroundings of the world. If you compared it to the new show, yeah, they added something new by making everything cutesy, but that doesn't work here because the show made it so cutesy to the point where some of the overall context doesn't make it so drastic and quote-unquote realistic.
Remember all the violence in the old show? Well, they chose to rarely show the impacts anymore.
Pick one of
No, they chose to make it similar to the original. Because the creators of the show actually cared, and they wanted fans of the original to appreciate their attention to detail. They rarely even showed the context of the fists in the original show. And not to mention, did you just miss this scene?
Hey there. What you guys so upset about?
Yeah, no, both of the shows are not similar towards the overall action scenes. Your example of the newer show have an impact towards the violence is a lot more tamer than the ones from the older show. I mean, even your example of the older show had blood on it. Fucking blood. Hence what Pan Pizza was trying to say within his point.
We know your home skips, pick up the phone skips. We know your home skips, pick up the phone skips. All right.
The show now has less crime fighting and instead has morals and bonding, character driving. Yeah.
Are you really complaining about that? Okay, where do I even begin? Oh, man. How can you complain about a show that teaches kids moral lessons and makes you feel good at the end of the episode? Short answer, you can't. Because making these characters human and giving them personalities beyond the original is a much needed improvement.
That is until if a show gets way too preachy with its morals to the point where it becomes annoying because of how terrible a story it could be. I mean, one example that I would have to bring up would have to be Horn Sweet Horn. In that episode, I'm not going to be touching about the whole transgender part, as honestly that really wasn't the concept of that show, but one of the morals that was within the episode, however, was don't rush into decisions. To explain more about this, I'll be bringing Doodletones' review of the episode as she explains this better, and you guys should check the review out, the link is in the description.
Using a horse that believed it was a unicorn being a metaphor for transgenderism is one thing, but using a unicorn who thought it was a horse who believed he at heart was a unicorn is something entirely different. Especially if you're gonna make your moral don't rush into things, which is a pretty big issue when you think about it. You kinda failed at your own moral trying to push an agenda and explore something like gender dysphoria. It kind of feels like you were doing it for the sake of doing it.
There are plenty of other episodes that could actually be the case, but often than not, that's actually one of the overall problems within the show.
Oh god, morals! What are you trying to teach?
It's amazing that the creators of the show even chose this route, especially with all the dumb pandering shows Cartoon Network has on now. Like Uncle Grandpa, Teen Titans Go, heck, even Gumball now just panders to kids.
I would like to contest you with the point about the amazing role of Gumball, possibly towards some of the other shows that you've mentioned, but mainly towards Gumball overall. Heaven forbid the show tried to appeal to a demographic other than your own. I mean, sure, there would be adults who would watch the show, but when it panders to children, then we need to stop and call the presses! Also, I would like to read a comment that you've made when someone actually did complain about Gumball being mentioned, since I have a feeling that if you're going to do a reply video to me, you'll bring this point up. The new episodes of Gumball are pandering. Nearly all of the new ones ends in the middle of a sudden situation, most likely to try and keep children's attention and literally end when an action is going on, but not in a good way. Sorry dude, but that's not pandering. According to WiseGeek, and I quote, pandering is the practice of adapting public statements and actions to fit the culture within a given group of persons. Essentially, pandering is intended to placate the individuals who make up the group and allow the speaker to make a connection with the group as a whole. If anything, your problem with the amazing role of Gumball isn't really because of it pandering, since they end in the middle of a sudden situation. I think your main issue with it is because of how it could be anticlimactic, though it really depends given on how it's performed, but I digress.
Not to mention, so you complain about Teen Titans Go when it's just a bunch of pointless filler nonsense trying to keep children's attention. But you also complain when a show actually has a point and a good lesson to teach? Are you ever satisfied?
You've misinterpreted the point again. He was saying that the show is way too preachy. He was not saying that he hated the morals overall. Please stop misinterpreting the point. You have given me cancer, AIDS, Ebola, and the secret virus all at once, you monster! Sorry. Though, can I ask you a question about the overall point about Teen Titans Go? Since when did he ever say that he complained about it being pointless filler nonsense trying to keep children's attention? I've asked this because based on his review of the show as well as the number 8 entry of the same countdown this is on, he never really complained about that aspect. Hell, he likes the show, but the only thing is that he doesn't even want it to be successful. Hell, he even find the humor of that show to be good. If you can provide me some proof as to where he stated that, then I can possibly retract this claim, but again, kinda confused here.
But it also has jokes you've already heard in other cartoons.
It's true. I was being
a horrible Buttzilla. Now say I'm a Buttzilla.
Your argument that it reuses others' jokes is that they use the word Buttzilla? You know that wasn't a joke for the audience to even laugh at, right? It was just for the characters, God.
First of all, why exactly is a joke in there if the writers know that you weren't meant to laugh at it? It just kinda seems lazy writing if you're not trying to entertain your audience. Secondly, the joke was supposed to be how Bubbles would try to fool someone to say Buttzilla because they were trying to hug it out. You did state that the joke was supposed to be for the characters, but it really wasn't relevant to the episode's plot. So the only purpose it serves within the episode is a joke.
It's not like when something funny does happen in a cartoon, every character stops and laughs at that joke with the audience. No! They totally ignore a joke that we're supposed to laugh at, and it's the same the other way around. We're not supposed to laugh at a joke that the characters find funny. I mean, it's not like you laughed at Blossom in that episode where her hair was shaved. If you did, you're a horrible person.
Okay, to be fair, that was actually a little bit funny. Well, looks like I'm going to hell, aren't I? A joke can be used for both the characters and the audience. One thing that you failed to point out is the infectious nature of laughter. Having characters audibly laugh in the episode with no setup to establish that you shouldn't also be laughing encourages laughter.
I think we got some tough times ahead of us.
tough times.
Change spoken!
Aww, you're starting to learn about titles. Aren't you? Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Okay, but seriously, just because it had titles come up over the footage doesn't mean anything.
Okay, editing nitpick here, but Jesus Christ, was that explosion very sloppily edited. I mean, it just feels like as if you made the contrast to the green screen very high to the point where the explosion looked like some of it was taken out. And then we have some shitty see-through explosion. Besides, that's not an explosion. This is an explosion. And that's how you're supposed to do an explosion properly. I should become the Michael Bay of commentaries. Except my content is considered to be good by many. I was mainly just talking about the explosions.
Also, you've misinterpreted the point again. Sure, he didn't outright say it, but I think it would be pretty clear about how it's not the title that made it a ripoff. It was mainly how the title was executed. Both of them have the over-exaggerated narrator voices with the same timing and feeling of each other. Pan Pizza didn't really say it was a ripoff because it uses titles. He said it was a ripoff because they both have the exact same context.
And wasn't your argument that this was a joke stolen from another show? 1, it's not a joke. 2, it's done well, not too annoying, and it does help the episode. So why would that even matter?
So, your first argument. I personally disagree with you on that front because Power was meant to engage the audience at random humor. Then your next argument is that it helps the episode. How exactly? You don't really explain on that front about how it's supposed to help the episode out at all. There, TVB, I finally used Steve from American Dad. Are you fucking happy now, you extremely nice person?
Excitement, excitement, excitement. Skates, skates. Buttercup, buttercup.
Running out of examples there, weren't you? So, a word echoes. That's your comparison from Pickle and Peanut to the new Powerpuff Girls? In that case, I'm surprised you didn't include...
Ricky Smash. No.
Or was that just too much work for you?
Hold up, my nostalgia senses are tingling. Oh, wait a minute, why am I using this avatar? Be gone, I say! Your only point here is to become a neglected avatar that I'll never use! Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, that last clip that you've just used. I think that I remember that clip that you used from somewhere. I just can't really seem to put my finger on it. Oh my god, please don't tell me! That wasn't supposed to be a joke, you friend! And even then, the main reason why the other two wouldn't work as examples was because you didn't really understand what the joke was supposed to be about. The joke was about repeating something a couple of times in a whisper in order to make it more of an echoey feel to it. This is to make things more, quote-unquote, edgy.
There's episodes that are remakes of the original Powerpuff, like you can't help but compare and see how generic it is. Remember the one where Buttercup joins a gang? Well, the cool thing about the Green Gang in the original, as opposed to the new Roller Derby Gang, is they didn't copy and paste the same character over.
You mean like Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup are pretty much copy and paste characters?
You know, I would just point to you the comment section of your videos. They actually seem to get the point across, but I might as well repeat their point for my viewers' sake. The main reason why Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup aren't cloned physically is because of the different shapes that they have within their overall head. Blossom has the long hair going down her back while she's wearing a bow on her head. Bubbles has ponytails, and Buttercup has I don't know, something that looks spiky, fangs, maybe? So if you make a silhouette towards the girls, then you can obviously tell them apart. And of course, the same thing can be said towards the new show with those main characters. Even then, thinking about this logically, they are technically triplets, so of course they would at least look somewhat similar to each other. However, when it comes towards the roller derby game, the silhouettes of their bodies are identical, meaning you cannot tell who's who besides maybe the leader. Some might say that's lazy writing / animating right there. Oh, and before you argue for the fact that they were also sisters, that wasn't really established within the overall episodes when they did show up.
Your argument is that this is a ripoff of the Gangrene episode from the original, and yet this episode features Princess, a giant bug monster, and roller derby. But no, it's a ripoff because Buttercup isn't hanging out with the girls. That's really where your comparison would end. The roller girls aren't even bad guys. They didn't even threaten Buttercup or even pick a fight with her. Heck, in the end, they helped free Blossom and Bubbles from a trap set by Princess. They're good guys.
You see, the Derbitons, we protect our sisters, and that includes sisters of sisters.
Why are you so set on assuming they're just copy and paste villains when you're obviously not even paying attention?
The villain can be different and still be used for the same plot. The plot is that Buttercup hangs out with the gang instead of the girls, which is very similar to the original episode's plot, but told with different characters. And the roller derby girls do stand in Buttercup's way when she tries to go help, thus putting them in the same role.
Remember 2 weeks ago when I made that Mojo meme generator?
The entire art style, as well as the show itself, ranges from meh to insulting.
No, it's not. The art is creative and vibrant. It's soft and wonderful. This world feels large, especially to the Powerpuff Girls. You can pick apart the design as much as you want, but not all of us agree with you. It takes the original style, updates and improves it while adding a little something of its own. Look at Townsville. It actually feels like a city. It feels like hundreds of people live here, as opposed to that misshapen building blocks of the original.
You actually want to know what I've noticed not only in this point, but also within the other time where he mentioned the art style / animation? It just feels like as if he came off as rather something that's kind of objective. Especially with how you said things like,
and don't tell me you would.
As not everyone is going to have the same opinions of the overall art and animation style. This is also prevalent with how you treat Pan's point as something objective when it's not. Honestly, that's not how critiquing works. You don't force your set opinions down towards someone's throat to the point where you face life in prison for choking the guy. Yes, you're supposed to articulate your point in an intelligent manner and show why you think the way you do in a way that makes sense to the general public, but opinions do play a heavy role within reviewing / critiquing the set piece. And the fact that you're dismissing Pan's opinion within this video like this, calling him an nostalgia tard, and something else later on within the video is kinda saddening. And a bit funny, actually. Hold up, let me grab them Keemstar popcorn. This might actually be entertaining as shit right here.
It's not bad because it's different. It's bad because it tries to recreate the old show and does average, while anything new it does falls flat. Like Shaolin Chronicles, everything done here could have been done better in the old show. Everything done here could have been done better in the old show. Could have been done better in the old show. Could have been done better in the old show. Could have been done better in the old show.
Always deserved this.
Ooh, this is going to be good.
Can I take her out now?
Let's do this! Hey, meatheads! Rhino kebab! Time to heat things up! Flamethrower! This is totally gonna suck! For you. That was awesome! Yay!
Yeah, I believe those examples both countered and annihilated your claim, Mr. Taxi.
Way to fucking drag out your fucking point with not only repeating Pan Pizza's clip multiple times, but also providing like 3 examples, one of which was about like 30 seconds, mind you, when you could have just explained in a sentence or two to explain your point. If this was about the overall animation to the new show being, well, new, and the old show being outdated, then way to drag out the video even more by repeating the point when you could have just skipped it. Is this the main reason why you only made this into a 17-minute-ish critique on something that was only 2 minutes worth? Bruh, don't do that shit again. Say it once, maybe twice if you need to, and then never repeat that shit again.
We know your home skips, pick up the phone skips. We know your home skips, pick up the phone skips. All right.
It's a reboot that can't stand separate.
You know what? Maybe I agree. It doesn't stand separate. It flies off and excels where the original couldn't.
But please don't tell me that you actually believe in that shit, huh? But please. Alright, fine.
Looks like I'm just gonna slowly die in a corner now, especially with the overall fact that your statement doesn't really have any sort of substance whatsoever. Did I just use my actual face as an avatar? No. I am not going to be using my actual face nor my actual body for any of my future content, so I have no idea as to why I'm even... Really? Huh.
It has nothing unique to offer besides shoving in smartphones, twerking, and lingo that'll be outdated in a few years.
I guess you weren't paying attention when they were totally dismissing these ideas.
Can't what? Can't even what?
Oh, like she literally can't even.
Whatever.
You see, Buttercup didn't care about the phrase Blossom said, so the audience doesn't even have to.
Yeah. Well, my name is Blossom and I'm here to say no rapping.
See, even Bubbles didn't want to hear that rap, because even the writers knew it wasn't going to be very good.
Then explain to me as to why people are critiquing the show mainly for having those moments where they did place in some of the internet memes / pop culture references within the overall show.
Like the No Me Gusta face, or the twerking incident that killed millions.
Just because that they're not wanting to keep some of the parts in doesn't mean that they decided to try some of the other stuff out too.
OMG! Yes! You do it! No me gusta!
I agree. The show would have been better if they didn't include those references. It might make it seem a bit dated in the future.
Oh, so you meant for the fact that there's a few things that they could have cut it out. Oh, and silly me, here I thought I was actually doing my job right, but instead I have you stealing it. You took my jib!
They took your job! We know your home skips, pick up the phone skips. We know your home skips, pick up the phone skips. Alright!
Shut up and stay away from this show, because you don't have to watch it by every little meaning of that phrase.
Oh my god, you actually did that. You actually used the don't like the show, don't watch it card, did you? Holy crap. This really discredits you as a critic. No, cut me off. I need air. Oh, sorry. That would have happened if I didn't cut myself off like that. There are so many problems within this argument, one of which is the fact that he's a critic and that it's his job, but you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna leave Pie Guy Rules' video about the whole don't watch argument being idiotic in the description. However, I want to bring in one point that Pie Guy made within that video because I think out of any of these, this one pretty much fits you the most.
I don't like this argument because you're effectively telling people to shut up. That is what it is. You are just saying, well, you don't like it, so stop having an opinion. As if only people who are fans are allowed to have their opinion heard. As if you have to be positive, and if you're negative, that's a bad thing.
Hell, the main reason why I've came up with that conclusion is because besides that one point about adding in culture references in the show, you're not really giving Pan Pizza a chance. Especially when not only does he wanted to make a video later about the issue, but the fact that you've constantly cut it into his overall argument to make this reply video longer than it needed to be.
It doesn't hurt anyone, and as far as I know, it's actually good for kids. So even if you were to argue that the reason you would watch it and bash it is because this is what Cartoon Network is showing kids these days, then that is totally invalid!
You do realize for the fact that he doesn't really review a show because it would quote-unquote ruin kids these days and actually review it on their own, right? Anyways, he basically explains why kids won't be ruined by the show, except for the fact that he doesn't like regular show. You freaking monster, I will suck your fucking soul out, you bitch! And then, this part.
Fatality.
Two issues here. One, Why all of a sudden did you make this one a CinemaSins style of outro by using the sins counter? Well, I'm not saying for the fact that you're ripping them off, but the fact that your video wasn't really in the style throughout your own video makes this whole sin counter kinda unneeded, truth be told. Finally, you're holding the scythe the wrong way, especially when you killed someone. This is how you're supposed to hold it.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Neros Q. He did 2 videos on Rebel Taxi, a reviewer that doesn't like the Powerpuff Girls reboot. At first, I didn't care all that much. MTR's already put out a commentary on the first video on Rebel Taxi, and to be quite honest, there's probably at least 20 commentaries on the video I'm covering now by this point. But as someone who's currently in the process of reviewing every episode of the reboot, I feel I can still bring new information to the table regardless. I'm also using #BoonSlayer so that I can make sure Neros has something to violently murder if he decides I'm worth a response. Let's get started.
While I didn't want to do this video any more than I did the first, I feel that it's now mandatory of me. Now, this wasn't supposed to be the next video, but I gotta strike while the iron is hot, or something like that.
Why? No, seriously, why? No one has a gun to your head telling you to make this video. If you feel it's mandatory of you because of your first video where you also criticize the same person for talking about the same subject, and in this review he speaks about the complaints you made, why did you bother making that video if, as you strongly implied with the wording of your statement, you didn't want to do that one either? At least with the first one, you were bringing up things that, according to you, weren't being addressed by others. But now that excuse is out the window since you got the discussion rolling.
Other than adults desperate to recapture their childhoods, was there ever a demand for more Powerpuff Girls?
Probably not, but it is still appreciated.
Okay, great, good job. Who gives a fuck? Seriously, all you're doing is agreeing with him. I'd say that additional statement about appreciating it adds something, but it doesn't. More importantly, based on your comments on Pan's podcast, link in the description, it's 2 hours long and unfortunately statements made throughout the podcast are relevant to the commentary, the sin counter at the end is apparently something you keep track of and, most of all, actually matters when it comes to the judgment. So, does this count as a sin? If the audience has no way to follow along with your math concerning the sin counter, then all it is an arbitrary number. And if all they have to do is count the interjections, then this interjection definitely shouldn't be here.
Brother Nero!
What made the original so unique? And what made this just average?
I'd like to say something important. Here's how much you should be comparing this to the original.
You are absolutely right. The show should stand on its own merits instead of needing to compare to the original. It is allowed to be its own interpretation of the same property. However, comparing to the original to discuss the series as a companion to the original is a good reason to compare the two. And if the writing of the show clashes with the original, considering you agree that the show was made because of nostalgic adults rather than a child audience that wanted it, then it's worth noting as it executes its intended purpose poorly. Also, this is gonna bite you in the ass. A lot.
Brother Nero!
It's not the worst cartoon ever. It's just lukewarm.
Well, I guess you could see it as that. I suppose it isn't bad, though. But hey, the original wasn't so great either.
So, you agree with him, and then compare this show to the original. Hey, remember that thing you said literally 25 seconds before this comparison?
Here's how much you should be comparing this to the original.
Oop!
Powerpuff Girls 2016 is the 4th worst cartoon ever made, in no particular order.
Oh. Well, if there's no particular order, then I guess it would be right below the original Powerpuff Girls. And the show must be pretty far down, since it's so good.
Why are you saying that there's an order when he said in no particular order? That's not how words work. Also, remember that thing you said literally 34 seconds before this comparison?
Here's how much you should be comparing this to the original.
I think you need to redraw your OC, and it doesn't look like it represents you well enough. I recommend using this as a reference.
Brother Nero!
And even when you look at it as its own separate thing, it's just bland.
Maybe to you, but not to me. Nor even a lot of other people, as I've seen.
They don't act bratty. They don't act stupid. They act the way that they were acting before. This looks like Powerpuff Girls. This sounds like Powerpuff Girls and feels like Powerpuff Girls.
Hey, that's weird. Is your example of someone who likes the new show comparing it to the old show? Hey, what was that thing you said 72 seconds before playing that clip? Oh yeah, the two shows shouldn't be compared. What? I'm not going to play the clip for 3 interjections in a row. That'd be dumb and boring. Kind of like Neros' video.
The showrunners went in with the intention to develop the characters more because apparently the old show was, quote, very limited from a storytelling standpoint.
This says it's about 3 girls who are always together and on their own. They're saying that's limiting a character-driving storytelling process, and they want to tell stories more with the characters individually and not always together. Which I can respect, and so should you.
Okay, so what you said and what Pan said are not mutually exclusive things. In fact, they're basically the same thing. First of all, the post that you're showing while saying this was the first one, which didn't even say that the girls were always together. The comment says the things you're saying are the reasons behind what Pan said. And here's the thing. It's not even true. But we'll get to that later.
They basically said, oh yeah, we could do better, when really, they could not.
Questions?
Never gets old. Actually, Pan, they could. And they did. And they'll probably continue to in the future.
Based on what? No, seriously, you're gonna back up that statement? Like, at all? Granted, Pan's about to talk about the characters and you're about to, try and debunk his points, but give some kind of indication why him setting up what he's about to say is wrong, other than, nuh-uh.
Blossom, the commander and leader, she's now Robin from Teen Titans Go or Lisa Simpson, obsessed with every single little thing being perfect. She was like that before, but now it's just too much.
Not even close. Blossom is shown to be smart, and yes, she has also been shown to want things clean, neat, and perfect. But hey, wasn't that Double D's character in Ed, Edd n Eddy? And that was an amazing show. Robin usually wants things to be perfect if the plot of the show commands it. And Lisa is not really that smart. She's more of a teacher's pet.
Oh, why are pine needles pointy? And, what's the difference between an asteroid and a meteor? Can you shrug anything other than your shoulders?
And she's not really that clean either. You ran out of examples, didn't you?
Oh, okay, wow, I could probably do an entire commentary on this one fucking statement. First of all, how is accurately relaying a character trait not even close? I will agree that he's blowing how much of a perfectionist Blossom is out of proportion here, but that is a rather dominant trait, especially in the episodes about her. And yes, those character traits do apply to Double D. And by the way, as Rebel Taxi said, some of this stuff does come up in the original show with Blossom, but we'll get there later, like I said. However, the quality of the writing is what separates a well-written character that utilizes these character traits from a badly written character that uses traits like these as a crutch for the writing rather than a tool. And I can honestly say that it does sometimes happen with Blossom. Although, like I said, I agree that Rebel Taxi's blowing it out of proportion. In addition, Blossom's perfectionism is more central of a trait than her intelligence, as opposed to Double D, whose intelligence is shown more often than his perfectionism. Robin's shown to demand things neat and perfect when the plot demands it? That's funny. So is Blossom. You saying that Robin and Blossom aren't similar in this way is, well, moot. In fact, I see a lot of similarities between the characters myself, but the difference comes in the fact that Robin is more consistently poorly written in the role than Blossom is. And as for Lisa, I'll agree that his comparison isn't the best, even though he's mostly referring to later seasons, but one thing to remember is that The Simpsons, at the end of the day, follows a much more grounded storytelling style than Powerpuff Girls or Teen Titans Go. So saying that Lisa isn't a super genius is an apples to oranges comparison. You don't show any examples of Lisa being fine with something not being neat and orderly either, so good job running out of examples yourself. After all, if Lisa wasn't that clean, you should be able to find her in the show being dirty without having to resort to Rule 34. For that matter, as for Rebel Taxi running out of examples, he didn't even need the examples he gave. His point was that Blossom was a perfectionist to an annoying degree. For that matter, he stated that Blossom was distressingly similar to these two characters. So how many examples were you expecting? Two main characters from current well-known shows is still unoriginal writing, man.
they shove an unrelated moral about having fun at the right time at the end?
Unrelated? You weren't paying attention, were you? Buttercup was trying to goof off in Miss Keen's class, and when the Powerpuff Girls were trying to stop the panda, he makes Blossom and Bubbles have fun instead of doing their mission. It's a clear comparison.
Actually, it is unrelated, because the moral is at the right time instead of at the expense of others, as implied one time. Never elsewhere in the episode does anything about anyone else's feelings get brought up. So basically, the lesson can come across to some as the fact that the fun was at the expense of others is a moot point, which I didn't put in my review, by the way, because I got what they were getting at, but I see his problem with the presentation.
Brother Nero!
How about a moral about respecting your underpaid teacher or not bullying kids?
Oh, perhaps a not bullying kids moral will be made in a future episode. You ever think of that?
Yeah, and maybe a lesson about the effect of chlamydia on the human body will be made in a future episode. I don't know. I'm not a fucking writer on the show, are you? Speculation doesn't prove him wrong. As the point is, once again, that this episode should have been about that and had all the tools in place to tackle that issue.
It's like they wanted to give her more character. She's an a**hole who learns a lesson. Now she's more likable and developed.
Yeah, she learns not to be an This episode, she learns not to goof off. This episode, she learns to control her anger. And in this episode, she learns not to take things that aren't hers just because she's mad. You don't pay attention much, do you?
It's clearly you that doesn't pay much attention. See, in the episode in question, Painbow, she doesn't learn not to goof off. She learns that there's a time when you need to stop. And the second episode you bring up, for that matter, Man Up, indicates that she unlearns that lesson that she just learned immediately. You could make the argument that the point is she's allowed to be angry, but not too angry, but it's played like an unlearning of the lesson that was put in place as a joke. Rather than as a lesson, she's learned to balance her emotions better. Only your last example really fits with your narrative. So that thing you keep saying about Rebel Taxi running out of examples? Yeah, that applies to you as well.
This is the equivalent of some jack-off smashing a vase and pasting it together like, look, I fixed it.
Actually, it would have been more of a person breaking a vase because they were fooling around, or out of anger, and then learning why they shouldn't have been messing around, or learning how to control their anger.
You do realize that he's making a direct comparison to a Brady Bunch episode where that happens, right? The point isn't that Buttercup didn't learn, it's that Buttercup is being more of a jerk in the first place than is reasonable in the first place. It's not even a point I agree with, but at least I have enough accuracy to know where the fucking mark is.
Brother Nero!
Oh, okay, Bubbles is not allowed to hurt people, but Buttercup is?
No, neither of them should hurt people. And they learn their lesson by the end of the episode.
Well, if you would have let the original video play, he's talking about Buttercup tripping the kid, which, by the way, I would have a counter-argument for. In fact, even the part I skipped over is about Buttercup tripping the kid, which, by the way, is not the lesson Buttercup learns at the end of the episode.
It's wrong to cause collateral damage out of anger, but to do it when you're in complete control is okay? I guess they're only developed when it's convenient.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. Bubbles and Buttercup seem to have hurt innocent bystanders for fun. But one of the issues with your argument is that these bystanders can go on with their day despite what Bubbles and Buttercup did. And in the case of this guy who received broken bones, that was played for a small joke, so it's excusable. I mean, stuff like this happens all the time in cartoons.
Oh, so now you get it. Even though, you know, Blossom actually did scold Buttercup for that, and Rebel Taxi points that out as an instance where Buttercup was scolded. Hell, he didn't even get onto the scene with Bubbles at all. He was just saying that the writing was inconsistent because Buttercup saw no repercussion for tripping that kid from Blossom. Granted, I could explain why Blossom doesn't scold Buttercup here, but that's not my job, at least not in this video. It's yours. By the way, before I go to my skip card, I'd like to note something about your examples of cartoons that have injury-based gags all the time. First of all, Rebel Taxi wasn't complaining about it. Second, the shows you display are shows that are known for slapstick humor, which Powerpuff Girls doesn't generally use on a frequent basis.
Brother Nero!
The show isn't meant to be like Steven Universe or Gravity Falls with an overarching plot. And I suppose in this regard, it is similar to Teen Titans Go, where the main, and perhaps only, similarity is how most or all the episodes are non-canon with each other and can be watched in any order.
What does that have to do with the writing being inconsistent between episodes? If the characters act in a different manner from one episode to the next, then it's a problem, whether the show is written with an overarching plot in mind or not. We Bare Bears doesn't have an overarching plot either, but the characters don't act one way in one episode and completely different in another.
It honestly does feel like all the writers had completely separate visions on what they want the show to be.
Well, aside from shoving in all those modern jokes and memes, not really.
Okay, the fact that I agree with you beside the point, what do the modern jokes in the show have to do with the writers having different visions of the show? Either you're saying that they don't use it consistently, which isn't really all that true, as some episodes just don't suit having jokes about modern culture, and even then, we've got jabs at conventional tropes in their place, which is a very modern type of joke to work with, or you're saying that the fact that modern humor is in the show at all shows the writers have different visions. Except it doesn't if all the writers are using it.
There were consequences to the damages done.
Well, Miss Bellum, you can get back to work now.
Sorry about that, Mayor.
Oh, that's okay. You also destroyed my beautiful city. You are flying in a no-fly zone. Land now.
They were just playing. Hey, wait. That was a movie. You can't compare this show to that. It's meant to be more serious and realistic. What? Why are you showing that example again? You're showing the movie again? Oh, I get what's going on. You couldn't find any other examples, so you kept recycling old footage, hoping it would just work and people wouldn't notice. Lazy. You're also showing clips from season 3 and later of the original Powerpuff Girls. The show hasn't even finished its first season, so it's hard to compare it with just 20 episodes as opposed to the 80 episodes of the original series.
Oh goody, another point I could do a full commentary on. Why yes, Rebel Taxi is allowed to bring up the movie because the fact that it's a movie does not mean it's meant to be taken more seriously. Yes, Craig decided to go on a more serious route with the movie, but there was no reason he couldn't have decided to keep its tone the same, or even sillier in fact, than the show. The SpongeBob movie is an example of the movie that doesn't take itself more seriously than the source material. This is also the canonical origin story for the original series, so it establishes the tone of the series as a whole. And by your logic, the episode Town and Out is also a serious toned episode, but you don't call him out for using that. And he didn't run out of examples. He only used the most overt examples, those being the ending to Uh-Oh Dynamo, even though the professor was the one punished for that, Town and Out, and the movie, which again is the origin story, thus an indication of the show's overall message. And now your argument concerning what season the footage is from. First of all, stop lying. Uh-Oh Dynamo was from season 1. It was the last episode of season 1, but it was still season 1. And Rebel Taxi only showed the clips that specifically called out the girls for property destruction. That being said, once again, you say we shouldn't compare a series with 20 episodes to a show with 80 episodes. Why did you do it earlier in this very video?
It's straight up just superheroes with the flaws the original ridiculed.
Well, perhaps they'll include issues like collateral damage in a future episode.
Once again, speculation. It doesn't debunk his point that the show didn't address tropes of the superhero genre from the onset. You also fail to factor in that the reboot claims to have more advanced writing than the original show. Not the first season of the original show, but the original show in its entirety.
I never thought these girls could be more simple, but they found a way. They found a way.
They're not simple. They've been shown as individual characters with their own defining personality and traits. The original sort of meshed them together, so it was relatively hard to figure out a specific personality for each girl.
Simple does not mean that characters don't have their own traits. Simple traits are still traits. Also, no. Here's a list of episodes from the first 22 episodes of the Powerpuff Girls that revolve around one of the girls more than the others. Octa Evil, Butter Crush, Boogie Frights, Abracadaver, Paste Makes Waste, Eyesore, Bubble Vicious. Not to mention the episode The Bare Facts, in which the girls each recount a story about how they rescued the mayor, and all of their accounts are different.
Brother Nero!
They're admitting they're trying to have more developed characters when, really, they're just way more in your face with their personality.
I think their personalities are more present there than
in your face.
And he thinks the personalities are more in your face. He's making a review, so the fact that he's stating his opinion is implied. Congratulations! What you've done here is make a no-you argument. Master TP10 will be arriving in 30 minutes to collect his royalty check.
There's so much focus on the girls that we never see much from anyone else in Townsville.
Maybe that's because they ran away in this shot. I mean, if a giant monster was attacking, wouldn't you run off while a superhero took care of it?
4 people and a dog. It's not exactly the type of numbers I would expect to be running away in the city, not even in the middle of the night. Especially since this monster already heavily damaged one building, so anyone in that building, or in a nearby building for that matter, that survived would probably be running away.
This cartoon is going to be a lot of kids' first introduction to Powerpuff Girls.
And it's a great introduction. Look, shows like Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Courage the Cowardly Dog, SpongeBob, and Megas XLR are all shows I grew up watching, and they all have background characters that aren't developed, collateral damage, and practically everything you've complained about. All I'm trying to say is that, as a whole, this show is good. Comparisons to the original shouldn't be made.
You know, which is why you said it was better than the original earlier. You know, which is why you skipped over parts that gave context to what he's saying. Namely that it feels he relies too much on knowing the original show. Which is the next point you bring up.
Brother Nero!
It relies way too much on you knowing the original when a reboot shouldn't do that.
No, it doesn't. I think you just can't get the idea of the original out of your head. And you really shouldn't be doing that. Sure, the narrator doesn't introduce the old villains like in the old show. But then again, he also doesn't introduce the new villains.
He didn't say anything about the narrator introducing villains, especially since the narrator very rarely introduced the villain, especially if they showed up after the opening scene. Your point here has nothing to do with what Pan's even saying.
But for a new generation, they're just like, who the f*** is this?
Yeah, they won't know who he is, and the girliness of how he looks now will help emphasize his true evil nature and power in later episodes.
They give away the punchline to the joke for the old fans before giving the setup to those who didn't see the original. Him being girly here doesn't emphasize anything. It's just here as a joke.
Why does this rich girl want to hang out with the Powerpuff Girls, and how come they don't let her?
She later explains that she wants to be a Powerpuff Girl, so yeah, no explanation right now is needed.
Actually, she explains immediately that she wants to be a Powerpuff Girl. What? Just because you debunked Pan doesn't mean you did a good job of it.
Why are they so mean to her?
Because you learn that the girls know she's spoiled and, dare I say, evil?
I just realized that your entire argument for why the characters are well established is because they're established later. That's not how storytelling works. You do get the impression of Morbuck's personality from the outset through her mannerisms, which is setting up a character. But the fact that they explain later on its own doesn't really prove anything. And by the way, there's a better reason for them already being mean. Namely that she's trying to replace their sister. Why did you not say this? I thought you watched the show!
Think about what you learned from the old intro. It's 1 minute long, but in just the first 30 seconds, you learn the ingredients, sugar, spice, everything nice, and Chemical X created superpowered girls who dedicate their lives to fighting crime and the forces of evil.
Also, what's cool is without saying a word, you get an idea on what these girls are like.
I'm sorry. The boredom and non-musical theme of this intro must have put me to sleep. Yeah, the intro of the original show explained what made the Powerpuff Girls, and you do get a glimpse into their personality with the musical tracks, but admittingly, that wasn't very entertaining. I remember hating this intro when compared to the song intros of Ed, Edd n Eddy, Fairly OddParents, and Shock Zone.
You don't like it. Therefore, nobody likes it.
So yeah, the new intro is better. But I guess I would prefer it if the sugar, spice, and everything nice was kept in the TV airings.
Wait! Back the fuck up! So you're saying that the original intro, which was the opening exposition followed by music, was boring. But you would prefer if the music in the new version were preceded by the opening exposition. I'd make it the same, but with different music!
In this intro, all we know is the girls fight crime, have powers, that's it.
I'm fine with this intro only showing the girls and only explaining that they're superheroes that fight crime. And if I want to know more about their personalities, then I'll watch the show.
Didn't you just say that you'd prefer if the opening exposition were in the TV airings? Also, the visuals in the intro also give subtle indications of the girls' characters. Like I said, just because you debunked him, which didn't, you basically just said your opinion is more important than his, doesn't mean you did it right.
Reboot does the day is saved at the end, but only on some episodes, and most of the time they do it, it's the twist.
Yeah, that is weird. Why don't they use the narrator's day is saved segment at the end of every episode? Look, I see what you mean with this segment, and for the most part, I actually agree with you. But the thing is, it's definitely ignorable. If kids don't get it now, then they will learn to get it. And if it bothers you, then you can ignore it. And it's not like it was an important segment in the first place.
No, but as a reviewer, it's his job to point out the small things that make the show less of an enjoyable and/or fulfilling experience. And once again, saying new fans will get it later does not help the quality of the show. Aren't you the one who's saying this shouldn't be compared to the original? Then maybe the fact that a new fan wouldn't get it in the first place is a negative. Which is something a reviewer should be pointing out.
Brother Nero! I like Teen Titans Go, since that's different enough to be its own separate thing from Teen Titans.
I get what you're trying to say, but the true sad thing is, well, that you're wrong. Teen Titans Go tried to do a separate thing and not involve the original. However, they have shown that time and time again, they want us to think that the show is actually better than the original.
So, the writers of the Powerpuff Girls reboot say they're trying to develop characters and tell stories in a better way than the original, but stands on its own. Meanwhile, a show that tries to be different, to the point of going to a completely different genre, wants to be the same as the original. I'm not even a fan of Teen Titans Go, but I fucking know the purpose of those jokes is not to compare itself to the original, but instead troll people who do compare it to the original.
Brother Nero! Powerpuff 2016 is just Diet Powerpuff Girls.
I think it's more of a different brand.
Which is why your opinion is better than his.
Brother Nero!
Wait, did I seriously just need another goddamn...
Makes you say... What's the point? Just watch the old show. What's the point? Just watch the old show. Watch the old show. Watch the old show. Watch the old show. Brother Nero!
This new show does a lot better than the old show. In terms of dialogue, character development, and especially animation. I suppose the original could have better jokes, but this series has some good ones as well.
You just went from calling them equals to basically saying the new show is better than the old show. Also remember this thing you said?
Here's how much you should be comparing this to the original.
See, when he says it doesn't matter, just watch the old show, your response should be,
okay, sure, if you don't want to give something new a chance and wallow in your own nostalgia, you can do that. But I'll be over here actually enjoying modern life. Have fun with your dial-up internet.
Do you see how much less contradictory that sounds?
Sure, the new series has more detailed backgrounds and a flashier intro, but there's no substance to it.
There is substance. You just choose to ignore it.
Yes, quite. Your butthole is not nearly as refined as my butthole.
Brother Nero! Memes, twerking.
As for the twerking...
We're gonna distract them with our booty shake to dance moves.
Shika, shika, shika.
Big butt, so what?
Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, stop. Everybody shake your rear end.
Yeah, I saw it as more of a harmless butt-shaking dance.
You know, I would say this is a case of you shoving your opinion down people's throats, but, yeah, no, this is just you getting your facts wrong. You see, twerking is characterized by an up and down motion, as opposed to a side to side motion associated with booty shaking. So, only two of those that you showed would even be described as similar to twerking. The clip from Chowder and the clip from Steven Universe. There are those who take issues with these scenes, especially the Chowder one, since Steven Universe at least has the excuse that Amethyst is actually 6,000 years old. I agree with you that it's not that big of a deal, especially given the context that it's used in, but to say it's not the same dance move is not a defense when it's the same dance move.
I've seen commenters defend this as a way to modernize it for kids today.
What? I'm not going to defend that. He's right. But didn't you already say that earlier in this review?
Bubbles, the joy and the laughter. She loves memes and ponies and unicorns and yes!
Oh god, you're repeating yourself now?
No, he's not. He stated that an aspect of Bubbles' character was that she likes meme. Now he's stating the explanation that people gave for why that could be the case. It's not repetition, it's elaboration. Something I noticed you to be very bad at. The only other thing in this whole damn video is Nero saying that the viewer should not bring up something he has fault with, thus telling a reviewer to not do his job. So I'm ending it here. Oh, yeah, he also does this. This video at first didn't bother me that much. Then I watched it a second time, and I got pissed off enough to make this commentary. Then I got even more mad as I was writing this script, as you provide nothing but speculation and opinions that you for some reason think counter opinions, and blatantly wrong facts about the original show, and a giant helping of hypocrisy to go along with it. I won't be surprised if I want to strangle you by the time I'm done editing this, although I doubt it since I'll no longer have to register my brain the garbage spewing from your mouth, and instead just focus on making sure the clips line up. Neros, I have some advice for you. Read over your script before you actually make the video. In fact, maybe have someone else read over your script. I'm sure if you had a second pair of eyes on the thing, they probably would have caught all the time you use comparisons to the original show as standalone points when you're preaching how the new show shouldn't be compared to the original show. Especially since you're planning on doing more of these, and since you plan on covering JonTron and others, I get the impression that if you don't get your shit straight, it won't be pretty when you deal with someone with a 2 million subscriber fan base. Good luck, but seriously, you've got a lot of work before you can tackle the type of stuff you want to tackle successfully.